Chennai sits at a unique intersection of commerce. It is a city where deep-rooted traditional trade meets the fast-paced, hyper-connected digital economy. In this environment, an entrepreneur named Nagalakshmi built Sri Sai Silks. She pioneered a product called the One-Minute Sari, a pre-pleated zip-up garment that allowed women to wear traditional silk without the complex draping process. By directly modeling her own products and demonstrating them to her audience, she gathered over 300,000 followers on Instagram. The revenue from her physical and online storefronts allowed her to run her household entirely on her own, paying the exorbitant tuition fees to send her eldest son to medical school in Russia and her youngest son to dental school locally. In her final social media posts, she appears radiant. She demonstrates her saris, smiles at the camera, and projects absolute control over her life and her brand. To the public, she was the epitome of the self-made modern entrepreneur. Her Instagram grid presented a flawless, pristine reality, one that entirely masked the crisis building inside her home. On a Monday afternoon, the timeline of that curated reality fractured. Nagalakshmi's 18-year-old son, Sailesh, was attending his college classes when his phone buzzed with an unexpected text from his father, Subramanian. The message read, "Your mother and I will no longer be at home. I have kept food for you. Come home and eat." Sailesh rushed back to their residence in Numganalar. He found his mother hacked to death with a machete in one room and his father dead by suicide in the next. The polished digital grid was instantly shattered. The violence exposed a fatal domestic crisis that hundreds of thousands of daily viewers never saw coming. To understand how the violence occurred, we have to look past the social media metrics and examine the history of the marriage. Nagalakshmi and her husband had been physically separated for nearly 2 years due to severe, ongoing family disputes. Following a major argument, Subramanian had moved out of their home in Chennai and relocated to live with his sister in Madurai. He was unemployed and entirely financially dependent on his wife. While he remained idle, Nagalakshmi was aggressively expanding her business footprint. She opened a second storefront, managed the household logistics, and paid the international tuition bills completely independently. But the 300-mile physical distance did not stop his harassment. Police records and family accounts indicate he continuously demanded money, forcing Nagalakshmi to send routine digital payments via GPay just to keep the peace. Moving to another city did not sever the abusive dynamic. It simply shifted the control mechanism to financial exploitation, fueled by a deep resentment of her growing autonomy. When trying to make sense of this abuse, we run into a psychological bias known as victim inversion. This occurs when society struggles to categorize a strong, financially independent person as a vulnerable victim. We see this clearly in the immediate aftermath of her death. In online discussions and neighbor testimonies, observers labeled Nagalakshmi as cold, assertive, and calculating. Meanwhile, they framed her murderous husband as a warm and quiet man who must have been pushed to his breaking point. To run a successful business in a competitive market, a woman must be assertive. Yet that necessary professional boundary setting is frequently weaponized by observers to somehow justify or diminish the domestic abuse she suffers behind closed doors. Because people could not reconcile the identity of a successful entrepreneur with the identity of an abuse victim, the escalating danger inside her home remained invisible to the public. About 10 days before the murder, Subramanian returned to Chennai. He apologized for his behavior, promised to change, and Nagalakshmi allowed him back into their home. This line graph tracks the typical levels of tension and risk in abusive relationships. Notice the distinct phases. When an abuser moves back in after a separation, it triggers a phenomenon known as reconciliation escalation. Sociologists note that the period where a victim is actively leaving or actively reconciling is the most statistically dangerous and volatile time in the relationship. By moving back in, his ongoing demands for money and her hard-earned autonomy collided instantly. The buffer of physical distance was gone. This reconciliation was never a fresh start for the couple. It merely removed the final physical barrier holding back an inevitable, fatal power struggle. The immediate fallout leaves 2 young men, an 18-year-old in Chennai and a 21-year-old studying in Russia, orphaned. A thriving digital empire sits completely vacant. Over 300,000 followers are now grappling with a profound dissonance. They're trying to reconcile the bright, colorful content they consumed every day with the incredibly dark reality that manufactured it. This case forces us to dismantle the myth of the perfect victim. Domestic violence does not always look like a terrified, powerless person hiding in a corner. A victim can look like a confident, smiling 41-year-old entrepreneur. She can wear beautiful silk saris on camera, manage a complex business, and fund international college educations all by herself. Financial independence provides a vital exit route, but it is not a literal shield against physical violence. To protect those at risk, we have to learn to look past curated digital personas and recognize the silent crises happening behind closed doors before the camera stops rolling forever.